Well, we are back again, and hello to the 56 already waiting to hear this presentation by essentially, I can't verify this, but by all accounts, a former Illuminati master. Okay, so before we get started, we had 31 dislikes on the show before it even started. Just so that you guys know, dislikes actually help because it shows interactions with the video. And if it comes from one sock account, then they all get removed anyway, except for just the one. So, pointless waste of time, but I appreciate the support, I really do, because this is actually going to help the algorithm assume that I've got a lot of interaction going on this show, so hopefully we should be pushing past the 200 people or so watching. That would be excellent. So I expect after this stream's finished, we'll probably get close to 2,000 views. That would be probably within the first 2 days. Now then, a little bit about this presentation. So I recorded this yesterday, and I've spent today editing the video, helping to make it run a little bit easier on the hearing, because there was a lot of ums and ahs. For somebody that doesn't really talk a lot on streams and stuff, it's understandable, because he is a reporter, he isn't actually a streamer. So I've spent all day editing the video. It is a 2-hour long presentation, so I hope you're going to enjoy it. I have had to put some filters on his voice to try and protect his identity. But I hope that what you hear will at least, maybe make you consider what's actually going on. Now, just to prove the point, he actually came bearing gifts as well. So he came bearing gifts with goggles and masks and all bunch of kind of stuff. So it's not like he just turned up and didn't bring anything to the show. This guy is deadly serious when he says what's going on with this virus. And, it was down to me whether or not I actually decided to put this out there. So I bit the bullet. It is a Flat Earth channel. It's the first time I've stepped away from Flat Earth on this platform. And I'm going to, let you guys decide. For me personally, there may be a lot of validity to what he said, but who knows? Obviously, this is a very contentious subject. So I do have the original video without all the stuff going on, the ranty flat earth and all the comments on the side. I have all that on an unlisted video, which I will put in the description during the show. So if anybody wants to re-upload the video to anywhere else, if they feel that they've watched the video, they think it's worthwhile re-uploading it somewhere, they can click the link and download the video on there. It won't have all the introductions, it won't have me speaking on it, it'll just have the information in that. So, without further ado, thank you, 5,000 subscribers as well. I passed that yesterday, in case you missed it. It was really interesting, it was a great stream. I had a lot of support from the super chats as well, a lot of people supporting the format and supporting me in that respect. So, I just want to say thank you to them as well. Okay, so we have a super chat already from the Shape of My World, 8. SEC $25, well, SEC 25. Hey Ranty, great channel. Thank you very much. Right, I'm going to go on mute. I'm going to transition across to the video. I'm going to let it play out in its entirety. I won't interrupt it. It's a little over 2 hours in length. So I hope you are ready. And without further ado, we shall get this show on the road. Here we go.
So here's the introduction to the British Bulldog. First of all, most people who have contact with me in this environment call me Dog. I decided that I would come forward and speak directly in public, which is something that I don't tend to do, because my world is one of the covert acting in the background. And I'm much more effective by using my contacts and information in the background and presenting information to places and operators where it has the best effect. So, as the British Bulldog, it gives me an opportunity to present the information that I have whilst protecting the covert nature of who I am, where I am, and what I'm about to do. It also helps my sources of information know that effectively I'm in a place where their information is safe, they don't get burned, and I present it in the most effective way possible. So why have I come out from the shadows tonight? Well, I guess events have really moved forward so quickly in relation to what is happening with the virus, the so-called coronavirus, the new or novel coronavirus 2009 as it has been identified. And there are events that are taking place both in the UK and elsewhere where great suppression of the media is taking place. As a bona fide journalist, I have the opportunity to communicate with other journalists and to interact with journalists on a professional basis, but at the same time to be able to maintain contacts in covert places, which allows me a lot of freedom, allows me the opportunity to really get inside information. So who really is Dog? Well, I'm a Blackpool boy. I was born in Blackpool at a hospital called Glenroyd, and very quickly, because this really isn't too important, I was initiated in my early 20s into Freemasonry at the highest levels in the United States. I come from a family of some interest in terms of its capability. My family have an esoteric background, high-ranking druids of the highest order in the UK, going back over 400 years. In fact, my family line, the McBoorish, were bards to the clan chiefs of the MacDonald clan, high-ranking, well-positioned to speak to the chiefs, to advise the chiefs. And I guess I find that I'm in the same position now, but I like to do it very quietly in a covert manner. And from that Freemasonry pathway, without getting again into too much detail or taking up too much time, because there's many things we need to cover tonight, effectively I was shown the doorway to a world which was totally different to anything that I could have imagined as a young boy being brought up in Blackpool. It took me to places all over the world, and through the esoteric path I have command and authority at the highest levels, beyond any of the highest Freemasons in the UK, because any of you that know the Illuminati pathway, the structure, which I'm sure quite a few of you do, the esoteric orders have power and authority above all Freemasonry. Freemasonry is a pathway of knowledge, or so they say. And so, in my particular position, high-ranking, 92nd, 96th degree, authority over all things. But it comes to a day when I had to make a decision, left hand or right hand. Left hand in the darkness, right hand in the light. And being the person I am, I had to act in the light. And so I went through the whole process of complete vilification, identify, vilify, nullify, destroy. But those were all learning experiences. Deep State tried to destroy everything that I was, but it's amazing how in spiritual terms you can move forward. And I live in a world of the temporal and also the spiritual. And I know that has nothing to do with what we're here to talk about tonight, but effectively, no matter what anybody says, those are the two worlds that exist. But we're talking about what's going on in the temple. So effectively, having the contacts and having the specialism and inside knowledge into all of these things, which I will return and talk about on other presentations, I became an investigative journalist to use the knowledge that I have in global intelligence and security and to act as a conduit for my contacts and the other informants that I have at the highest level in intelligence agencies, military intelligence, and other command structures. And I act as an investigative journalist. I act in the public interest area, trying to hold power to account. And it's not an easy job, but it's one that I'm cut out for, and it's one that I've been shaped and moulded for. And it's something which I believe I'm extremely good at and resilient in performing that function. I act also as a consultant for private military contracting organisations, and I'm part of several intelligence groups within those private military contractors in terms of risk management and logistical management and information management in all of these areas. So I come from that background, and that really is really quick synopsis of who Dog is. So we shall move on, shall we, into the area that I'm here to talk about tonight. And it's about the coronavirus. But before I get into that, I'd like to just speak directly to every single person that is listening to this broadcast. Let this broadcast be saved and presented directly, quickly, and effectively across all social media platforms, because I really want every citizen in Britain and wherever they hear this recording, the United States, China, globally, wherever this recording is heard, I want you to sit up and listen to what I have to say. So, let's start at the beginning. The beginning is what is happening. Where are we? What is happening? People say that they sit down at home, they watch the news, and sometimes they can't believe what they're hearing, but day by day things are getting worse, darker, more troublesome. I want to wake you up. I want to wake you up to the fact that we live in a society in Britain which is controlled at every level. We only have ourselves to blame because we've allowed the people who are in power, the deep state, the people who really control things, to take control. We've allowed them to bring in regulations, regulatory control over this, that and the other. An example, even just the other day, I went into an Asda store and they got facial recognition. Why on earth would Asda want facial recognition? We're surveilled at every single point in our lives. And yet, when we watch the mainstream news, which I don't because, to be quite honest, it's not worth watching. No, I'm only joking, I have to, because I have to analyse what they're saying and what they're missing out. But effectively, our media is controlled. They speak in a way that removes all the control, all of the information, all of the independence that people have, and they tell a narrative which they want the public to hear. And unfortunately, most of us, most of the public are dumbed down. They're in a position where they accept what they're being told. Except things have started to change. There is a popularist movement spreading across the world, and that has placed the world in a very dangerous place, and placed us all in that place. Edmund Burke said, "All it takes for evil to prosper is for good men to do nothing. I hear the little voices of people say, well, if you've done nothing, you've got nothing to worry about. But remember, those that give up freedom for security usually lose both. And he who ignores history usually lives to experience it. And here we are today. There's never been events like what we are seeing today. What is happening in China? The powerhouse of manufacturing, industry, financial services. China, the growing, mighty empire, is about to fall. How can that be? How can one of the leading economies of the planet, with 1.3 billion people, suddenly collapse? Oh, you say it's not collapsed, but it is on its way. So what is happening? So let's get into the situation that we see before us. Coronavirus. New coronavirus. Novel coronavirus 2019. That is the narrative that we are being fed, spoon-fed at every doorway. But in fact, that's just its fake name. So I created a name, a more fitting name, and that name is Infecto, the China weapon virus. That sounds dramatic, so let me fill you in. What's happening in China? How did this all start? China, for a long time, has been trying to create weapons that they could use to establish their great new empire. And they opened a number of weapons, biological weapons laboratories, what are called BSL-4 labs. And this lab in China, in Wuhan, was just one of those. So they had 4 events where they released the SARS virus. And we all know what happened there, the number of deaths around the world. But there's a saying, you know, that the deep state has. You've probably heard it before. Never let a crisis go to waste. And so they used that infection to study the deployment of it and the effect of it in the wider public domain, and decided that when they made the next weapon, they would learn from that experience. I want to then bring in some political information. So the foreign minister of China, Wei Feng, before the Christmas period, told the Chinese Central Committee that for them to be able to establish their greater kingdom and their greater empire and to defeat the Americans, they would have to take some drastic action. He said that China and the United States could not coexist. More importantly, he said that it would be best for them to be able to, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it would be best for them to be able to take over the United States and all of its assets intact, and rather have a very costly war, conventional fighting and new types of weaponry. The easiest way of establishing that and achieving that will be to create a biological weapon, and a weapon that will be sophisticated and capable of achieving all of those aims. And so here we are today with novel coronavirus 2019, or as I call it, Infecto. And from now on in this broadcast, I am going to refer to the virus as Infecto, because I want that narrative. I want the imagery that is attached to this production to be spread far and wide, and I want you to play your part in doing that. But I'll come back to that at the end of this presentation. So, the virus was released. Personally, I hope it wasn't deliberate. I like to think that the hypothesis that my intelligence and other scientist colleagues have called it an accident. I like to think that potentially one of those poor monkeys who was being experimented on in the development of this vaccine attacked one of the technicians. I think that's the narrative that really works here. The technician bitten or spat upon, contracts the virus, takes it home to his family, and here we are. China notified the World Health Organization on the 25th of December. That first event, China says, occurred on the 16th of December. So I correct, the 24th of December was the date when the World Health Organization was notified from Wuhan. Well, what happened next was, because of the hierarchical situation in China, that technician would not be able to report what had happened, because that would be certain death for him and his family. So he kept it to himself, and here we are. So, from that moment on, China was doomed. And all of those movies that you've seen, 12 Monkeys, 28 Days, is now playing out in front of our eyes, day by day, as we watch China be consumed. That is the only word for it, consumed by their own weapon. So what is this thing? What is this infecto virus? Well, I can tell you quite clearly that it isn't what the UK and US and worldwide media are presenting. Because what they're trying to do is to have their cake and eat it. They're presenting the narrative that allows them to ensure, or try to ensure, that the economy continues, and then when they produce the vaccine, people who are in the deep state are able to make substantial billions. But I don't think it's about that, not just that. This is a weaponized virus. And quite clearly, in the public domain, if you go and do your own research, you will find that the narrative from the mainstream is just complete smokescreen, a complete illusion of sound bites. Because it's quite easy to find in the public domain information, documentation that is available, that other researchers and journalists like myself and other citizen journalists like those in China have found. There are journalists in China who are dead. And they're dead because they gave us, journalists like me and some of my more vocal colleagues, the information that I'm going to give you tonight. So you don't have to die. You don't have to sit and watch Sky News and the BBC. You can sit at home and think about the sacrifice given by those journalists and the citizen journalists, the young men and women who have given themselves to get this information out into the wider world. They too, in the last few days, have disappeared. We won't see them again, but we thank them for them. So, before I get into this any further, I want you to change your focus. I want you to think about all of those people in China. Forget the jokes, forget the little comments you see on Facebook, and remember that every single one of these people are human beings. They are our brothers and sisters in this world, and they are being decimated It is not the Chinese people who have done this. It is the Chinese government, China. And that is why I call this Infecto China weapon virus. It is the control grid. It is the control committee. It is the deep state that has been creating this. So I say thank you to those journalists. They'll never hear my thanks because they've already gone. But as a journalist, I feel it is my duty in the public interest to bring this information to you in Blackpool, to you in Britain, to you in Brighton, to you in the USA, and to you wherever you hear this broadcast. Early February 2020. Will we ever see it again? So, this virus, this Infecto, was created in a lab. The narrative that it was from a market, from an animal, is partly right. It is from an animal, but it was from a bat. But it's not from a bat that was eaten. This is the front end is a bat coronavirus. We know that because our intelligence contacts have provided us and other journalists with the actual delivery note for that particular virus to the actual authorities in China who manufactured this demonized weapon. We have a document, and that document, which is in the public domain, so I'm not keeping it for myself, it's already been shared by other more eminent journalists than me, more vocal journalists than me. That document shows that this initial bat coronavirus was delivered to the military and medical regiment, the Chinese Army military medical regiment, based in Nanjing in China. Towards the autumn of last year, I think that's the correct date. That virus then was developed, shall we say, in the BSL-4 lab in Wuhan. And they created what I would think, and what I would describe as the Andromeda strain. So this virus is a hybrid, and there is ample evidence out there of that. And why do I say that? Well, first of all, we've established that the front end is a form of bat coronavirus. But something else has happened, only in the last week. A lab based in India has been doing research and testing into the virus that's been shared by the Chinese government. And during the course of that research, they discovered that an anomaly, something which should not have been there, this was just a coronavirus. And what they found was a protein. This protein is called P-shuttle-SN. For those of you who don't know what that is, P-shuttle-SN is a protein that's found normally in the HIV virus. So let me confirm this. This is not HIV virus, okay? It's just a protein that's based in the genome of the HIV virus. So this protein is appearing in this so-called coronavirus, Infecto. This protein is a very special protein. It's the thing that makes HIV highly infectious. So obviously scientists with the mind of Frankenstein decided that it was very important to insert it into the genome of this Infecto virus. So it's found there, which has made then this virus highly infectious. In January, a few weeks ago, The Lancet in Britain published some research in which they said that the infecto virus, an infection rate of 83% and a fatality rate of 15%. Those figures have actually changed slightly, but I'll get to that in a minute. Of course, the narrative for the mainstream media is that it's only 2%. But you see all these virologists in the UK from Imperial College, this and that university, and they're all saying, well, this is a common cold, it's just a common cold, a bit worse than a common cold, or you'll get the sneezes, you'll get a bad cold, it might be a bit like the flu. And then you get them appearing on TV, again as they did last night, saying, we've never seen this. We've never seen this type of virus before. We don't know really what's going on. Of course they haven't seen it, because they're looking for a coronavirus, when in fact they've got a biological weapon. Of course they've never seen it before. Just because you're a virologist doesn't mean to say you're an expert in biological warfare. And let me tell you, the experts in biological warfare, in fact, the leading authorities in relation to the creation of the Biological Warfare Act, have actually already come out and said this is a biological weapon. This is a bioweapon. So, it's not me saying that. It's scientific. It's proven. It's just that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. So this weapon, this infecto, front end is a bat coronavirus with a protein which makes it highly infectious. The next stage of this virus is something much more sinister. So let's go through what actually happens with this virus. So an individual comes into contact with somebody who is infected. From that contact, 83% chance of infection. Doesn't matter whether you're Chinese, British, American, that's the figure given by Lancet. Of course, that study now is being criticised because it wasn't such a large group. But I think the numbers that we see in China speak for themselves. It's highly contagious, it's highly infectious. And no matter what anybody says, whether it's the Chief Medical Officer of Britain, he's not a biological scientist, he is not a bioweapon scientist. He is just towing the party line and telling the public what his peers tell him to say. Because he has no other evidence. All the evidence is on the other side. So this virus, this infecto, what is it? What is it doing? I'm hesitating before I get into this because this is big. And if you don't live in the world that I live in terms of intelligence and information, you might not like what you hear. So if you don't want to hear any more, I would say switch on. But for those of you who are keen enough to want to know, want to be informed, want to stand up and say, I'm looking after my family and my friends, I need to know what's going on, then listen on. So this virus, it first attacks any individual. It plants itself into the mucous membranes, in the throat generally, and it sits there and waits. And that's why the incubation period is being assessed as between 8 and 14 days. Now, I'm going to beg to differ with that, because information that was presented over the last couple of days by the Chinese Ministry of Health through certain channels and media outlets, which are not reported in the mainstream in the UK, but are open if you go and have a look for them, reported yesterday that they are seeing incubation rates are between 20 and 24 days. So it makes the UK government's suggestion of 14 days quarantine being sufficient to be completely preposterous and a complete underestimation of what is being found in China. The infection rate, 83%, sounds to be okay, but I would again beg to differ with the fatality rate, and I think what we're seeing on the ground in China speaks for itself. The Chinese government themselves over this last weekend stated that they gave out some figures which basically gave away some inside information that they didn't expect, but as Mike Adams, the scientist and creator of Brighteon.com, that you might know, the alternative to YouTube, which isn't censored, so a very intelligent man, a man of great intellect, and I would say on a genius level. As he said, a 7th grade child could do the math on the figures that they created and presented, and it works out that the fatality rate is between 15 and 17%. However, I have seen some intelligence translated from local committee in Chinese villages in rural China, where they're actually saying that the fatality rate in those sorts of locations, where you've got small populations but highly condensed, very close families, maybe 7, 8 people in the same house and room, they're seeing 43%. But let's go with 15%, shall we? Not 2%. So this virus plants itself in the mucous membranes, and it sits there. It is a very sophisticated virus. What it does, it spends the time of its incubation being infectious. So you can have no symptoms whatsoever. So all these tests that you see of people coming through airports and having their heat of temperature of their body tested, well, yeah, they're the ones that are manifesting the symptoms. But the majority of them are not manifesting, but they're infected. Because this thing sits in the mucous membranes and waits. What's it doing in there? Well, I'm reliably informed from my intelligence and science contacts that it's assessing the individual's DNA. It's so sophisticated, this virus, that it can actually assess the racial difference between targets. It has the capability of then looking at their individual DNA. And as we know, some people in our society are poorly. They have medical conditions. Their immune situation and condition is suppressed for whatever cause. They have other conditions like asthma and breathing difficulties, COPD, etc., etc. And there are those who are super fit, supplement, eat good food, exercise, and whose immune system is very strong. But this virus has been engineered in a weapons lab to take care of all of that. It assesses the individual over that period of incubation. And then, when it's assessed the individual, it attunes itself to that individual and then goes on the attack at the most vulnerable part of that individual's immune system. And that's why it is so effective. The secondary symptom is a form of pneumonia. Pneumonia is bad at the best of times, but at its height, this thing not only causes pneumonia, but it transfers itself into pulmonary pneumonia, causing damage and potential fatality to the individual through the damage to the heart caused by that pulmonary pneumonia. That function is being suggested, although when the first reports came out, they have been suppressed since by the inclusion within the virus of pneumonic plague. Now, I know I will be censured and vilified for saying that, but I would say, prove me wrong. There is a function, whether it's pneumonic plague or not, that is causing the pneumonia. And thirdly, other symptoms of hemorrhagic fever are being expressed by individuals. So this virus is deadly. It is a bioweapon killer, and it is a sophisticated one at that. So I'm sorry if that has shocked you. But all I would say is, before you vilify me, go and do your own research. Do not sit there in your lounge listening to the news, listening to Sky News, listening to Adam Bolton, listening to Dermot Murnahan, listening to whoever the news presenter and anchor is. I'm only citing them as news anchors. Do not listen to the narrative that they are giving. Go out and find out for yourself, because you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your own family. Nobody is going to come and look after you. The narrative in the UK is that the NHS is fully prepared. We have taken an action plan and we are fully prepared for what is coming. Well, one of the most powerful economies on the planet is just about to be destroyed. 400 million, these are the figures, 400 million Chinese in up to 40 cities are now completely in quarantine. They are locked in their homes. And the stories of what is taking place not from Sky News or the BBC or ITN, but from citizen journalists who are on the scene. And these brave people are producing video, which is irrefutable proof of what is really going on. 400 million people in 40 plus Chinese cities, by the time you hear this presentation, are in lockdown. In Wuhan and Hubei province, which is the epicenter, ground zero for this infection, drastic measures are being taken by the Chinese government. Videos have emerged over the last 2 weeks. In fact, I have to congratulate one UK media outlet, the Daily Star. I never thought I would be congratulating the Daily Star for anything. But believe me, those journalists there have stuck their neck out. And I would like to congratulate one in particular who I've spoken to, called Emma Parker. And she presented an article, and she presented several articles. If you go and have a look at their recent archive, if you go onto their Daily Star website and put in coronavirus, you'll see articles relating to the coronavirus, and quite a few of them are actually written by Emma, who is a young journalist, and I give her credit. On the 20th, I think it's the 25th of January, the Daily Star published the images in Wuhan at that time. Now, those images were completely shocking. And they showed people just walking up the street and suddenly face planking, dropping down dead in the street. And the Daily Star showed pictures of people in corridors in the hospital on the floor dead, with covers over them. People in hotels dropping dead in reception. People in the street dropping dead. There's even one video that was so bad, I just can't tell you what was I can't describe it. But these videos are shocking, and the Daily Star showed the photos and the videos to their credit. And I'd like to congratulate Emma Parker as a journalist, and her editor, and the owners of the Daily Star for having the courage to stand up and go against the grain. To those journalists who are publishing the codswallop that has been presented in the mainstream news, I say we should all hold you accountable when these things finally come to light. We'll hold you accountable for what you have failed to do in the public interest. In my particular case, as I say, I will probably be vilified for this report, but I'm a grassroots journalist, and at my heart I love my country, and I act in the public interest and against the powers that be, and against those who would do things to the people against their will and do it in secret. Now, I understand the argument about, well, we don't want people to panic. Well, of course, I don't want people to panic. I want people to be informed so they can prepare. Back to Wuhan. So when the virus first attacked in Wuhan, the mayor of Wuhan made a fatal mistake. Again, because of the hierarchical system, he could not report to the Central Committee what was going on, because he would be dead. They would kill him. And so what did he do? He lied. And he withheld the information. And the estimate is that 5 million people were allowed to leave the city of Wuhan before the Christmas period and before the period of Chinese New Year, which was celebrated in the UK on the 25th of January. When the authorities in Wuhan finally acted, what they did was they closed off some of the railways and some of the flights, but still a further estimated 300,000 people left the country and left Wuhan, rather, and those people went to relatives. And how do we know that? Because in China they have very much like Google, it's a system called Baidu. And Baidu is the same as Google Maps. You know, you've got a geolocator on your smartphone, and so Baidu does the same in China, and they can monitor your movements everywhere you go. And Baidu reports that these 300,000 went out and spread themselves right the way across China. China's doomed. China is going to be totally and utterly consumed. No matter what the government says, no matter what the British government says, no matter what the Chinese government says, it is going to be totally and utterly consumed. This virus is invisible. Any of those citizens can have it and not know they have it. How on earth can they control this thing? It would seem to me to be totally impossible to control it. The only way to control it is for quarantine, and for a very strict quarantine. That must be the only effective way that you keep yourself to those who are yours and hope that none of them are infected. It is a nightmare situation, but I'm only the reporter. I'm doing what good journalists have done throughout history. I'm just reporting to you. I'm telling you what I know. I'm not telling you down the pub. I'm telling you live in this presentation. And both I and my production assistants for this presentation honestly and earnestly believe that this information should be presented in a way to which the British public understands it. And that's what we're attempting to do now. Scenes in Wuhan are the same as things that happened in Nazi Germany. Totalitarian, draconian state machinery has now taken over. In Wuhan, citizens who are infected or suspected of being infected were being boarded up with wooden battens in their homes, or if their residential building had metal gates, it was welded shut. Those videos of that, with the party officials and police standing outside viewing it, were shown by citizen journalists who, some of them, have now disappeared. and then those buildings were set on fire. Can you get your head around that? That is what is happening. And Sky News and all of these other news channels are reporting the minimal amount of information. But we need to know. The British public needs to know. We need to be able to plan and to prepare. Videos have emerged even of citizens who fall over infected and then pop, pop, pop from a police officer standing over them, who obviously has just euthanized the individual. People in the media are congratulating, people in the World Health Organization and all the major governments are congratulating the response of China. Why the hell are we congratulating China? They have released a bioweapon. And let's just remember this. They developed this weapon deliberately to destroy their enemies, principally the US and then Britain. And this thing has come home to roost. Unfortunately, it's out and it's in the world, and we have to deal with it. In Wuhan and other cities surrounding Wuhan, videos have been produced that were presented on other channels yesterday of bulldozers shoveling thousands, not hundreds, but thousands of dead bodies in yellow body bags into open pits because they cannot burn the bodies quick enough. And we know this for a fact. Again, the Daily Star published video photos of smog, black smog clouds, and other channels around the world, but the Daily Star picked it up again. Videos and smog clouds, black smog clouds, for the whole day and night in Wuhan and other cities, because they are burning bodies to get rid of the infected remains. So much so that yesterday on global news channels, in the alternative media, not on TV, you go and have a look, instead of looking in your smartphone, go and have a look online in other places and you will find it. Okay? Images from environmental satellites that are picking up hotspots across China, particularly Wuhan, Hubei and around there, of places where the environmental camera from the satellite has picked up hotspots of sulfur dioxide clouds, and at such a high level that it's completely toxic. Now, obviously, burning of human remains releases substantial amounts of sulfur dioxide, which is poison. That is what is happening. So now I want to get to the fatality of this. If you believe that China has been locked down and 400 million people plus and more daily are locked down because it's the flu virus, then you want to have your head seen to. I'm sorry to put it in that way, but effectively you're in cloud cuckoo land. To lock a whole country the size of China, 1.3 million people down, for 900 deaths is completely preposterous. The economy of China is in meltdown. The Chinese government have had to deploy 2 trillion yen, Chinese yen, last week, and probably the same amount this week, just to provide liquidity into the stock market. So the really sick thing is that in the West, the markets are doing okay. People are making money out of this crisis. Remember what I said? Never let a good crisis go to waste. Well, that's what's happening. But suddenly the chickens are going to go home to roost. And most of the economists, the major economists of the world, are working on the basis that I saw a thing on Bloomberg the other day, is this the tip of the iceberg? You can bet your bottom dollar, pal, it is the tip of the iceberg, because the iceberg is just about to sink Titanic China. There's an economist website, it's called King World News, KWN, I think it's KWN.com, do a search, you'll find it. Derek King, an economist, he's a journalist who has, like I have intelligence contacts, he has economic contacts. And his economic contacts are some of the world's most powerful billionaires. These people know money, they live and breathe it, and they've got so much of it, they can buy countries. And invariably he interviews those people on a regular basis, week by week, and he has a panel of them who he talks to. And they all know what's happening. They're reporting 400 million in lockdown. And they're reporting that don't have cash in the bank. Don't have any more than 3 months cash in the bank, if that's what you've got. They're recommending gold and silver, which those of us that understand these things and the way the geopolitical situation is, understand that that's the way it should be. One of these billionaires is recommending to his clients that they don't just have 50% gold or silver bullion, they have 100%. When that Chinese economy melts down, and it's on its way, it will bring down the Western economies with it. The fiat currencies that those of us that have spoken to you before about, and I'm not an economist, but you understand the principles, will melt down because there is nothing backing them. They are paper money. Silver and gold have always been stores of value for 5,000 years. That is the way the world operates. The Chinese economy has had 0 GDP. I'm going to repeat that. 0 GDP for 6 weeks. The ports of Shanghai and Shenzhen, the most important Shenzhen, responsible for shipping all of those Chinese goods, all of those items that our manufacturers are waiting for, they're closed down. Maybe 1 or 2 ships, not many. Industry in China is closed down. People are at home. And 2 things are happening. Either people are locked down and not going to work, or they're still away in another province for the Chinese New Year, which the government is continually extending because obviously they can't let people come home. And they're away from their work, so they're not going to get back into their factory. And then I want to say something about this. If this is coronavirus, just coronavirus, would you want to buy anything from China that's got coronavirus on it? Made in a factory where somebody sneezed? The facts remain from China that this virus can actually exist on items. Now, our government, the UK government, can't dispute that. Because you remember seeing those adverts that we used to see on TV. If you've got a cold, sneeze, don't sneeze on your hand, because then with your hand you touch a handrail and you pass it on to somebody else. You get into the lift and you're pressing the button and you sneeze on the button, so the next person who touches the button, you pick up their cold. Well, what do you think a bioweapon's going to do? Chinese governments have confirmed that this could at least a minimum of 25 days, maybe longer. So, does this mean that Amazon's going to go bust? Because do you want a parcel from Amazon that's been sneezed on, or it's been made in somewhere where the virus is? And I'm not being racist here. I'm not blaming the Chinese people for this or identifying Chinese people. And I would say to you that anybody that does that to a Chinese person should be ashamed of themselves. They can't help what their government has done to them. I have many friends who are Chinese. They are beautiful people. But think about this. I know a lot of you will find what I'm saying to you difficult, but that is because of three things. One, you've allowed yourself to be controlled and allow the government and the people in power to do what they want to you and say what they want, and you're just busy getting on with your life. But busy getting on with your life isn't the same mentality that our forefathers had in the Second World War. If they did that, Hitler would be running this place now. They got off their backside and said, "You aren't doing that, pal, and I'm going to go and do something about it." And that's what you need to do now to look after your family. Before this thing appears in your street, in your community, you need to go and look what is happening. So, would you buy a parcel from a Chinese supplier? I'm talking in a corporate sense here. Why would you? How do we know what is infected and what isn't? At the very least, does it just have coronavirus? Or does it have infecto on it? And I want you to keep using that. I want you to say to people in power, what are you talking about coronavirus for? This is infecto. This is China weapon virus. That's the narrative we need. That's what you need to be doing. That's what you need to be saying to your MP. That's what you need to be saying to your health authority. That's what you need to be saying to any authority that tries to convince you that there is no risk here. No wonder the World Health Organization designated it very quickly as a global pandemic. Yeah. And we have only just had a wave 1. So this virus has, according to Lancet, 83% infection rate. And because of that P shuttle SN protein, it's highly infectious. Can be passed on without you knowing the person has got it. That person can be potentially infecting others over a period of, well, as the Chinese government have said, 20 to 24 days before they actually manifest any symptoms. By which time they've infected potentially many other people. That P shuttle SN protein was researched by a thing called the Consumer School together with Cold Spring Harbor Labs on the 2nd of February. And I have secured that document as a PDF, which will be available, so I'm told by my producer. So you'll be able to gain access to that to see for yourself the situation there. Don't buy Chinese goods until we're told the truth. Don't buy Chinese goods until you know what this thing is. Don't ship Chinese goods. Don't deliver Chinese goods. Why would you? Why on earth would you? Okay, so now I really want to come on and come into, I think I've talked enough about what's happening in China, which is horrendous. But effectively, the economy in China is in meltdown. They haven't got control. The government knows that they've let the cat out of the bag, and they can't stop this thing. And the whole of the country will be consumed. And I think most analysts would agree with me on that, from what's been seen on the ground. So, in the second part, I'd like to go into what's really happening in the UK. So again, before I get into that, I want to cover three things again. One, you're either in a position that you don't really care. I saw a comment on Facebook the other day, you're a selfish person who only cares about themselves, saying, I'm bored with all this now, I want to get on and do my selfies. This is when millions of people are infected. Don't believe the figures that are coming out in the news. We have intelligence. I have seen intelligence reports which have been jumped on, but think about it as a percentage of the population, 400 million in lockdown, highly infectious, infecto, spreading across the country. Again, I'll be criticised for this, but hey, I've heard 12 million plus infected, and even if the figure's 10 times what the government in China are saying, you're talking of 10,000 dead. But I think you can put another couple of notes on that. And I say that because of the satellite images and the bulldozers and the secrecy of what is going on. And the fact that they built that hospital in 10 days, the first one. Have you seen the video images of it? Of course, CGTN, the global Chinese television news that appears on Sky when you go on their news channels, their listing of news channels, is promoting, how good these hospitals are, etc., etc. But there are other images from citizen journalists that show that these hospitals have cells. They're warehousing those that are infected. They have a 6-8 foot cell, a window with bars, a little hatch for whatever they want to push through it. And then they have a crematorium facility either at the back of the hospital or very close by. That's the process that is going on and being repeated. Why on earth would you believe the Chinese government? This is a government that kills its own citizens because of their beliefs. Muslims, Christians, they don't really care very much about what they are. Falun Gong. They take them to farms, to encampments. And before all this happened, this is what they were doing. And they were taking those people there and removing their organs while they're still alive and selling them in the marketplace. This is the China government. This is what they do. This is why the people are so scared. Anyway, I'm going to move on now. I'm going to move on to what's happening in the UK. So what I want you to do is this. One, I want you to get rid of what is known as normalcy bias. That's really when you're hearing what I'm saying to you and you don't really want to know because you want normality to continue. Let me tell you, nothing is going to be normal from now on. There has never been an event like this in the history of mankind. 400 million people locked down. We're not exaggerating here. I haven't come out of the shadows to present this to you without great consideration. I'm much more effective in the background. I'm much more effective in a covert world. Even my family doesn't know what I've done in my last 40 years. I'm a man of 60. And my life history reads like one of the Bourne Adventures. And I haven't been an agent for a government intelligence agency. But I have worked in the shadows. And I have done things in the shadows. And I've done good things and I've done bad things. And I've made mistakes. But I believe that I'm here for a purpose. I'm just a guy who was born in Blackpool. But I come from a family line that has had a power and authority and still, through me, has that power and authority in certain circles. So, you need to get over the normalcy bias. And then you need to get over what's called cognitive dissonance. Where, it goes in, but it doesn't sort of register. You need to wake up. Party time's over. This country is under attack by a silent, invisible enemy. And our government currently is not telling the people what is happening because I understand it. We don't want people to panic. And I'm not presenting this for people will panic or not have any hope or whatever. We have to work together. And I'm going to say this now. The powers that be want to bring in draconian authority. But they've got to remember that we are the people, they serve us. I want to say this quite specifically to all police officers. Every police officer in Britain, every chief constable, you do a great job, a very difficult job, which is growing harder day by day. Yeah, we hear the stories of bad apples. Yeah, we've got that in everything, in every part of this world. But on the whole, police officers are there trying to help people. And their workload is increasing. In fact, they become the mental health front line. In a more dangerous world where people are carrying knives, and although I don't believe the narrative as much about that, because I know lots of other things that I'm not reporting here, but it's a difficult job. But when this thing hits Britain, police officers, remember my words. You too have a family. This thing, this invisible enemy, is potentially going to attack your family, your friends, your relatives. You're just ordinary British citizens with a place of authority. Remember that the citizens are going to go through the same thing that you are. So when you exact the powers that have just been created, and when you apply them, please remember, this is not China. This is Britain. We are a proud people, and the people will help you do your job. But be fair, and remember, all our rights have been taken away from us by acts and statutes, but our common law rights still remain. And remember your oath of office. And to chief constables in each of your areas, and particularly in the area that I'm going to be reporting about, Lancashire. To the Chief Constable of Lancashire, I implore you, remember who you are. And to every Chief Constable I say, remember who you are. I have no faith whatsoever in the individuals who call themselves police and crime commissioners, because they are a hierarchy that has been put in place by the deep state powers that be to act as the mouthpiece for the government in every single Force County area. In the old days, it used to be the case that the Chief Constable had sole responsibility for his men and women. Chief Constables, I want you to try and stand firm. And no matter what edict is coming through the Police and Crime Commissioner and through the government mandarins of the Cabinet Office, I want you to stand firm and protect us. Protect your people. Because we rely upon you. And it comes from the top. And we want you to speak to your men and women and remind them that we're their public. Remind them of their oaths. Constables serve the public, not the corporate monster. No country is going to ever be the same when this thing hits. It is going to be a tsunami of chaos. If you don't believe that, look what is happening in China. And so I then come to what is happening in Britain. And because the government sees what is happening, they brought into place new powers yesterday. New powers signed by Matt Hancock. I had a really good look at them. The first notice I saw came out on Facebook where it said on .gov UK that the Secretary of State for the Department of Health and Social Care has powers now under Regulation 3 and Regulation 2. They didn't actually state what power that's all. They even become so blasé, they don't even state what power, authority, statutory power they're actually acting under. But anyway, after a bit of research and through some, how can I say, local government contacts of mine, very kindly did some research for me because I was totally busy working on other things, as you can imagine, with this going on. They came back and confirmed to me that it is a new statutory instrument, and when I had a look at it, it was actually signed by Matt Hancock. It was signed by him at 6:50 a.m. Now, I understand that there was an emergency that took place because one of the people placed in quarantine, from the first flights of the people that were repatriated to the UK from Wuhan, the ones down at Arrow Park, he wanted to go home. Obviously, bearing in mind, and don't want to vilify that individual, because bearing in mind what he's been told about this, you get pretty fed up for 14 days, believing you've got a form of flu, and then they'll let you go home. And of course, so the narrative is that they had to bring this power in because he wanted to go home. Yeah, right, and I'm a Dutchman. This power is an instrument, a statutory instrument. It's reasonably complex language, and there's a lot of information in there, legalese. That wasn't drafted in a moment. At 6:50 a.m., it was already prepared. Because the government knows. We have one of the leading intelligence agencies and apparatus in the world. Between MI5, MI6 and GCHQ, we know what's going on. They've got their own agents on the ground, just as we have our own agents on the ground in terms of journalists and private military contractors and operators who are on the ground, who speak quite clear. We have people in China and Taiwan who report directly to us. We know what's going on. We have our own intelligence as well as the intelligence services have their own contacts. Major corporations have risk management organizations that tell them what is going on when they're making billions in investments. They use people like us to provide that information. And so the government have brought in this power, and it is a draconian power. Make no bones about it. It says that a person, any person, can be either isolated, placed in isolation, or detained. And they can be detained by an individual with authority, and it specifies certain authorities, police officers in particular, but also others. And those people who they say, who they assess, who they think are infected, can be isolated or detained. Now, that takes away a lot of our civil liberty. There was already a perfectly good public health legislation in place. And of course, anybody who's infected, in the society we have to protect ourselves. And we have to be able to protect ourselves from people who are infected by whatever it would be, not just with infecto, but also from other diseases, the things that come our way. But that was effective and it was working. But now we have a piece of legislation which is police state legislation, control, total control. And tied to it is a secondary piece of legislation which was already existing, of what they call Part 2A orders. And those Part 2A orders do something quite interesting. It was pointed out to me by my local authority advisor, shall I say. And that's Part 2A capability. It actually specifies what a next of kin is. And it actually goes on about, for example, the wife, is the next of kin of the deceased person, which it identifies as the letter P. And so the next of kin of the person, the deceased person, is referred to as P in each of the sections. So does that mean that they're expecting lots of deceased persons, by which a police officer can specify that the deceased person, we need to make contact with their next of kin and we need to do it in this particular way? The UK government knows what's coming. I don't think the virologists do. I think a lot of them live in their own academic world and they believe that they know better than anybody else. What would you know? But actually, I know quite a lot. And I'll take you on head to head anytime in relation to this. So, in Britain, that order is already in place. So the control grid is already there. And when this thing hits, and they have to place people in quarantine, or create quarantine areas, they have the powers in place to do so. And that will mean that you will not be going out. It will be like a form of medical martial law. It will mean that you'll be in your home, and you will not be going out. To a certain extent, I agree that that's really the only way to stop this thing, or to at least mitigate. I don't think we can stop it. I just don't think there is any way that this thing can be stopped. The reason I say that is this. This infecto is capable of mutating. It mutates from one person to the next. So when we hear the stories of vaccines, I don't know, I don't understand, and I don't think, and I really do not believe that they can create a vaccine for this. And I say this because if you create a vaccine for it in me, and I pass it on to somebody else, they're going to need a different vaccine because it's mutated. How can you deal with that? The only way that I believe that they can stop this is if the people who created it have some sort of master key. And I don't think that's going to be forthcoming, because now I don't want to get into any esoteric areas in terms of the knowledge that I have, in terms of the greater plan of the deep state, in terms of what they really want to do. That's not for this presentation. But in Freemasonry, you may have heard before, they have this thing, the pyramid with a capstone, and the phrase that's on the dollar bill, bragging rights really, ordo ab chaos, order out of chaos. The powers that be can't allow this crisis to go on forever because they need to have a certain population to run things. And so, my personal feeling is 18 months of chaos. I also found something quite interesting when I looked at that piece of legislation that I just reported to you, the power given by Matt Hancock. It's the coronavirus, it's new coronavirus regulations. You'll find it if you go onto legislation.gov, and you'll find it there. Coronavirus Regulations 2020. And it has something specified right at the end of it, which says that this regulation will remain in power, in force, for a period of 2 years. Seems very strange that, because a lot of statute, and I've looked at hundreds of statute incidents in my time. I'm the guy who's challenged legal authority and all sorts of things. A few years ago I was carbon monoxide poisoned. I took legal action against those that did it, and was destroyed by the system, basically, and that's another report. And I've looked at hundreds and thousands of pieces of legislation, worked my way through legislation. I've not come across many that have a specification of the timescale of its power. Just a side thought, they won't happen to know how long it's going to be for, will they? I don't know. Anyway, back to the UK. So, in terms of the UK plans, they obviously brought these powers in to deal with what is actually the reality of what is coming. On the 25th of January, the mainstream media was reporting, and the government was reporting, that 2,000 Chinese plus had come into the UK from Wuhan. They're no longer reporting about them. But those Chinese came into the UK for the New Year celebration, the Chinese New Year celebration. And the weekend of the 25th and 26th of January was a big celebration in every Chinatown in Britain, particularly Manchester and Liverpool. Manchester had over 100,000 visitors that weekend to the Chinese festival. How many of those Wuhan visitors were there? Remember, We're only 14 days past that. This thing is still incubating. How many people are being infected? So let's go back to this again. The Lancet, peer journals, The Lancet, Nature, and even Hong Kong University are fully reporting scientific information about, and other laboratories around the world about this. Ignore what the World Health Organization is saying because they have their own agenda of what they are going to do. Other laboratories around the world are reporting the same things that I am reporting here, but it's not being picked up. 2,000 Chinese in Britain, where are they? What have they done about finding them? Those people may not know that they've got any form of infection whatsoever. It's not their fault. They don't know. I think it's gone far beyond that. And I hope I am proved wrong, but only time will tell. Remember the virologists on TV saying we've never seen anything like this before? You can bet your bottom dollar they haven't. So, as Lancet says, 83% infection, 15% fatality rate. The transmission rate is being reported, generally speaking, in the area of 3.8 to 4.1, which means that each person who's infected will infect 3.8 to 4.1 other people. This is not being widely reported. When those people are infected, they go and infect other people, which is called secondary infection. And they go and infect other people, which is tertiary, third infection. The intel that I'm receiving from China is that in the secondary and tertiary phases, it's 6 and 7. So again, let's cover some of the narrative. So today on Sky News, they had the statement from the individual called the super spreader. Well, remember what I've just said to you about initial transmission, 3.8 to 4.1, secondary and tertiary, around 6 to 7? I don't believe that there is anything such as a super spreader in this case. Not an individual. I think everybody who has it is a super spreader. You see how the narrative is twisted by the mainstream? Steve Walsh, the super spreader. Poor man. So he made a statement today which said, Steve Walsh, he's a scoutmaster by the way. So he, quite rightly, went into self-isolation. A very honourable man to have done that, to try to protect everybody else. And thank you, Steve, for doing that. But he said that he's been told he is fully recovered. Yet, in the statement it also said he's still in isolation. How can he still be in isolation if he's fully recovered? Are you awake, in isolation, but fully recovered? With a side note of, just as a precaution, why would he need a precaution if he's already fully recovered? Because they know what they know, but they aren't telling it. So what about some other UK events? Okay, so let's talk about Brighton. So we've got a GP surgery who the mainstream is reporting as a health worker. You see how they twist the narrative. It's a GP. So a GP who has got coronavirus, who is infected with a virus which we have now reported, or the Chinese government has reported, isn't subject to an incubation period of 14 days, 8 to 14 days, but is actually 20 to 24 days. A GP who has seen patients for 3 weeks with an infection rate of 83%. You do the math. So each of those patients, should they not be quarantined? Should all the members of staff in the practice be quarantined? And now it's spread to a second practice, which, from my understanding, is another practice where he saw patients. So should those patients be quarantined? And should they be quarantined with their families? This is what's happening in Britain. We have such a lackadaisical approach to this. So we're then told that the practice has been cleaned by men. Sky News said today, the reporter that I heard said, hazmat suits. Well, actually, if you look at what they were wearing compared to what they're wearing in China, they're wearing hazmat suits in China and visors and nitrile gloves. The guy I saw carrying a mop bucket in the GP practice was wearing a decorator's Tyvek suit and a surgical mask. I'm going to get into what is needed for your protection further on, but that certainly isn't a hazmat suit. So he's potentially infected as well. It is like something that John Cleese wrote on Fawlty Towers, the way we are going about this. And they're even talking of reopening it. So then we're going to come to the quarantine in Wuhan, of the Wuhan returnees. So again, you see how blasé they are about this. Anybody who saw the videos, and it was really criticised on Facebook, and rightly so, and good on those people that made the comments. You've got shots of the coach drivers. I watched it. BBC had a really good vantage point of that plane coming in. And you see the coach drivers shaking hands. Shaking hands with the returnees who are potentially infected with Infecto, a bioweapon, which the government knows is a bioweapon and allowed it to happen. The pictures that I saw were very telling of the coach, the front of the coach. The driver sat there in his jumper and his tie and oblivious to what's going on, and behind him is a guy in a full hazmat biosuit, spaceman. Were those drivers asleep or what? And this is the attitude of the British public. And I've talked to some friends and I'm very careful about the things I talk about and who I talk to about them. Because I've learned the British people have this approach, unfortunately. It's not their fault, but in a lot of cases it's because they've been conditioned. But they have this attitude, oh well, it's not going to happen to me. I have it in some of my contacts. You know, it's not going to happen. You know, it's definitely not going to happen. We don't think it's going to happen. There you go. It is happening. And it's happening slowly. It's not being reported, but it is happening. The British people have this approach. I have a name for it. I'm in two minds to call it what it is, but I'm going to. And I'm going to say to you, if I don't say it to you, nobody else is going to say it to you. Stop being dumb. Don't be what I call don't understand much Britain. Dumb. Wake up. It's arrived in this generation, in our lifetime, and we need to deal with it. We need to get together, all of us, every single one of us, in this battle. Because this thing is major. It's the biggest thing that any of us have seen. What's happening in China is the biggest thing that any of us have seen. It's bigger than the Second World War. It really is. We are very slowly hear of reports. This thing is going to build up until they can no longer keep control of it. And I firmly believe that we're about 4 to 7 weeks behind Wuhan. Here in Britain, I'll repeat this again, I believe that we are about 4 to 7 weeks behind Wuhan. Now, we have some things on our side. Some people say, well, we know it's much more sanitary, there's not as many people live together in close proximity, etc., etc., etc. And I think that might help. But if you think our NHS is able to deal with this, I'm going to give you a world exclusive here. I have reported what I am going to tell you next to all of the mainstream news channels in Britain and to several in the US. It's a story that came to me through sources in Blackpool, my hometown, and I had to respond to it straight away. because I spent 35 years of my life away from Blackpool, out in the world doing what I've had to do. And excuse me for becoming somewhat emotional about it, because I love my hometown. It's where I was born. It's where I was brought up. I'm a Sam Gronin. I love the town and I love the people. And it's a hard life in Blackpool for some people. And the Far Coast. A very hard life. But they're great people. But in a lot of cases they allow themselves to be controlled by the people that run the town, who aren't their friends. You only have to look at the mental health figures and the mental health service in Blackpool, and it is atrocious. But that's another report I'm going to be making, because I have inside information, and I have my contacts, and I have my sources, and I have people who have suffered as a consequence of the failure in the service in Blackpool for mental health, and that's another argument, another discussion. But I love my hometown. I love the people. And I am breaking this story. I've broken it to the mainstream media, to some of the biggest names that you will know. And I'm not going to out them now. But all I will say is, you know who you are, you know what's been reported to you, and you kept silent. And when an accounting is given for all of this, when we say, could we have done this better, your name is going to be at the top of the list. And you are going to be held accountable for those reports that you are making currently. Accountable to the people for your failure to give them a heads up. I'm going to give a world exclusive here in a report in relation to Blackpool, my hometown. There was a major alert at Blackpool Victoria Hospital a week last Sunday. Facebook reported a message from Blackpool Victoria Hospital stating that don't come to the accident emergency unless you really need to. We're a bit busy at the moment. I have reported in a world exclusive through my news organisation, not my covert news organisation, but my mainstream news organisation, that on that day, a man was taken to Blackpool Victoria Hospital as an emergency, blues and twos with police escort. When he arrived at Blackpool Victoria Hospital, the accident and emergency department, so I'm informed by my sources, was cleared of ill patients who were waiting to be treated. They had to go outside in the cold. This man was escorted in and placed in an isolation unit, rather, shall I say, a side room. We all know Blackpool Vic. We know its history. We all know, as Blackpool people, what we call it. Okay? It's not staff's fault, it's the people who run it. And have been running it for years. So this man was placed in a side room, which they set up as a, what I would call, pop-up isolation room. The staff were not in spacesuits, hazmat suits. They were in aprons and surgical masks. They were totally unprotected. What's special about this man? He arrived with respiratory difficulties, shall we say. He had returned from Wuhan on the 16th of January, had been ill every day from that time, gradually getting worse. So obviously he'd gone through the phase of incubation, as I've expressed it to you, all of that time period, infecting others, and then went to the hospital, still infecting others, into a side room, which was not a proper isolation room, and was treated there. Unfortunately, the man passed away about 2 hours from his arrival at the hospital. And I wish to give my sincere condolences to his family and friends. More sinister is the fact that then, what is reported by my sources as UK government officials and World Health Organization officials arrived and seized the man's remains and took them away using secret World Health Organization powers. That man, as far as I know, hasn't been seen again. Inquiries were made with Derek Quinn, the Director of Communications, in relation to the isolation facilities at Blackpool Victoria Hospital in the light of that event. And his response was pompous and dismissive. In fact, in his written response, he referred the inquiry to the Department of Health and Social Care. That inquiry was in writing and was in-depth and specific in relation to the isolation facilities at Blackpool Victoria Hospital. And what I'm talking about here is air-controlled isolation units where the people are in spacesuits, where the air in the facility is controlled so that the air that is taken out is treated and is ionized so that it cannot be infected any longer, and then it's got its own air system. Very interestingly, on Facebook tonight, there is a report that the Blackpool Victoria Hospital has now got a new isolation pod. And I firmly believe that's as a consequence of the pressure that I have created by my external information to the world's media. But whatever they employ at Blackpool Vic, it is insufficient for what is coming. They cannot manage the A&E department, and from my experience, the management of the A&E department, from what my sources have informed me, has a very arrogant approach. It's their department and they control it. Well, all I can say is I hope you're good enough to deal with what is coming, because I've been in A&E myself, and shall I say I was appalled at what I witnessed. It's not the staff's fault, it's the management and the people who control it. So, that is my report in relation to Blackpool. But I have more questions in relation to that, because what has been done since about every single person who was in that accident and emergency department? What steps were taken to sterilise that area? And my sources tell me that the staff on duty were sworn to secrecy. In an event like this, in a town of 60,000+ people, it is totally unacceptable. I love my town. The people that run it don't love it, don't care. I'm going to tell you something now. Because of the debacle that I was involved in, where I was carbon monoxide poisoned, I told you I took some legal action, and the powers that be decided that they were going to use that to try to destroy my resistance to the system and my whistleblowing of what was happening. And as a consequence of that, I lost everything. I ended up living in my car. Now I'm a very resilient man, but it nearly destroyed me completely. And I've seen some things in my life. And you know the thing that really got me most? Some jumped up little person in the housing department who told me, listen to this, who told me that I wasn't a priority as a Blackpool boy coming back to my hometown seeking protection. I was told I wasn't a priority, I wasn't important. That is symptomatic of the people who run this town, Blackpool. And when this thing hits the town, it's going to be the same people running it. And I would like to say to every single citizen and police officer in Blackpool, join together. Don't listen to those people at the town hall. Don't listen to those people in control. Don't listen to those people in Lancashire Care Trust that run the mental health services. They don't care. They aren't interested. They're in it for their job. There are great people that work in the council, in positions of responsibility, but not in the management hierarchy. They don't care. And even the media in Blackpool doesn't care. And they split the narrative. A man falls off Wilkinson's building. No, he jumped. Because SPA, the single point of access, and every other service that was supposed to look after him, did nothing. That's what happens in Blackpool. And every time there's a report about mental health, the response from the public of Blackpool is 150, 300 time responses to the narrative that's being published. So I'd say to my fellow Sangronans, wake up, get yourself prepared, don't rely upon the Vic, don't rely upon the council, rely upon each other. That's the only way that we can get through all of this. Okay, so what's happening elsewhere in the US? Well, I'm reliably informed through certain intel contacts and other media contacts that I fully trust that 2 weeks ago the head of FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, reported to the President Trump that, in their opinion, America, the United States, should be in total lockdown. No flights in, no flights out. I understand that the response goes something like, unfortunately, it's election year. The Iowa Democratic primary thing is taking place, and got to get the impeachment out of the way. So all those things are out of the way now, and I understand that in the background, plans are being made with earnest. And those plans include 16 or 17 FEMA camps being prepared as quarantine centres. They know what's coming. Indeed, sources are reporting that President Trump and his administration are asking direct questions of the Chinese, is this a bioweapon? Of course, they already know the answer, but that's very useful when it gets into the media. So, the USA is making plans, and so is Britain. So what's happening in other parts of Asia? Well, of course, Hong Kong, Singapore, Thailand are all bracing for the next phase, which is about to hit them, which is the full Wuhan phase. Hong Kong is being told by my sources there that they are scared. And they're scared that they can have 300,000 infected very quickly. And they know what's coming. And it's very important that we understand that. We also have to understand that the Hong Kong people have been part of the global movement. And this global movement is starting to stand up. About 40% of the world's population in this, what's called popular movement, popularist movement, where we're starting to say we've had enough. And that's not what the deep state wants. And in fact, I'm reliably informed that the thing that really made the Chinese see red was Hong Kong citizens waving Trump's picture and the American flag. And here we are. Okay, so what do you need to do in the UK? To my brothers and sisters, my fellow Britons, we're a great people. We need to remember who we are. Remember what our fathers and forefathers did. My father was in the Navy during the Second World War, and I'm sure your parents and grandparents have memories of these things. We need to stand up and remember who we are. So what do you need to do? First thing first, don't panic. Don't panic. Don't panic. Prepare. There is a movement around the world Britain as well of what people are called preppers. They've been much vilified and laughed at by those people that really are more interested in taking selfies and having a good time. But the one thing I know about preppers is that they have an understanding which is much broader and deeper than most people. They've taken on board what the world calls conspiracy theories. But of course, if you didn't know it, the phrase conspiracy theory was created by the CIA as a counter-intelligence operation to actually destroy the truth narrative and call it a conspiracy theory, which then identifies, vilifies, nullifies and destroys the truth. Preppers have been prepared for a while. They are going to do their best to survive. And I'm afraid I'm speaking now not just to people in Blackpool, but I'm speaking also to the people in the whole of Britain and elsewhere who are hearing this. You're my brother and sister too, because we are linked together as humanity. Don't panic, prepare. And I can start to tell you how to prepare, and I will do another programme. I'm an expert at preparation. I'm a prepper. I know what's needed and what to do. And I'll tell you what the intelligence services won't tell you. How you need to do it. But you need to prepare. You need to prepare your home. You need to prepare yourself. So you'll find, unfortunately, that masks, goggles, nitrile gloves are disappearing very fast. I even saw on Amazon that some of the appropriate masks were being sold, 3 for £99. That's unfortunate because you didn't get a heads up. You weren't told by your government that you needed to do this. But what I would say to you is this: you need to buy masks to prepare. You need to buy gloves, nitrile gloves. You can buy them online. You need to buy goggles, even the workman's style goggles. There are stores, good stores, like in Britain there's one called Home Bargains. Other stores are available, but they sell goggles, they sell £1.99, more than suitable for these purposes. This virus can invade your body, and it can go through your nose, through your mouth. It can go through your eyes. People have been infected through their eyes, and through your ears. It can get in, so you have to protect yourself. That's why you see people in the suits they're in. But you can protect yourself with goggles, with a mask, and with gloves. And be scrupulous about washing your hands. Buy, and now they use the brand name Dettol, okay, in the UK, but other places have other things. And I'm also mentioning that in particular, there's a really interesting anomaly that's been broadcast on Facebook in recent time. Dettol as a product, and other products are available, but I've been specific about this particular product. I'm not promoting it, but I am citing it as very useful. Dettol produces a product called Dettol Surface Cleanser. It's the clear one that you see you spray your kitchen countertops with. When you look at the ingredients on the back, it actually says that it kills off quite a broad range of bacteria, but it specifically says MRSA, rotavirus, Covert, etc. But it then specifically says coronavirus. I'm reliably informed that that was a change not too long ago. I find that very interesting. And what did that company know to actually put that on the product? It's the only product that I know that actually says that it kills coronavirus. So I would recommend that you go and buy some and do it quick before it runs out. Now, in terms of masks, there was a type of mask called the N95, that's N for Norman 95, and N100. Again, my sources tell me that those masks, unfortunately, are not capable of withstanding this particular virus and have failed. But there is an alternative mask, and it's called an FFP3. So that's just like a standard rating, a protection rating. That's Foxtrot Papa 3, FFP3. So when you're searching for masks, you need to put in face mask FFP3 and do your search for it and find it. And you'll find that they're pretty expensive now because unfortunately there are individuals out there who like to make profit from people who potentially cannot protect their families. And I would censure them now live on the air. I would call them out, and I would say to anybody that knows them that you should disassociate yourself from them, because those individuals, those companies and those individuals, if you do business with them, I would stop doing business with them until they bring the price of those masks down. This is not an opportunity, not a time for you to be making a profit from people's potential to protect themselves and their families. It is a despicable act. You should be censured for it, and you should be identified and vilified by the local populace for doing so. And make no bones about it, you are making a profit from other people's potential harm. It is time for you to sell those items at no profit. Relist them, put them on at no profit, limit the number that any individual can buy so that they have sufficient for a set period of time and they can deal with that. And you make sure that the people who have got the opportunity to at least have some. Do not sell them all to one place. Reduce the price, sell them at cost, together with the cost of postage, and do your public duty to the people of Britain. And any company that is making a profit from this should be identified and censured through social media. They are life-saving items, and you should be ashamed of yourself for trying to make a profit from it. So you need those masks, you need those gloves, you need the surface cleanser, you need to be getting yourself antivirals, you need to be able to boost your immune system up, you need supplementation, you need multivitamins, you need to take everything that you can, vitamin D and other substances to actually improve your immune system to give you the best chance for you and your family to basically fight the infection or the potential of infection, to keep yourselves healthy. I'm now going to come to money. I'm not a financial advisor, and you must take your own advice. But you'll find in the world markets that most of the smart money is saying this. And those who are major preppers who understand what is happening, the Chinese economy is going to go into meltdown. They cannot continue to put 2 trillion yen into that market. Liquidity will only last for a period of time, and as reported, as I said before on Bloomberg, it's only the tip of the iceberg, and the market is seeing that. So you need immediately, one, I know people sometimes are living, quite a lot of people are living month to month, just managing the bills. And that's the system that the UK government have created for us, thank you very much. But here we are. If you have money in the bank, and you can afford it, keep 3 months' money in the bank to pay your bills over a 3-month period. My advice is to take the rest out. My next piece of advice is that you should keep it somewhere safe. Tell nobody what your preparations are. Keep it to yourself and your family. With some of that money, which you can afford, we need to buy food. You need to buy food for 2 reasons. One, it's going to disappear quick. Not talking about panic buying, but people need to stock up. Most people have only 3 days worth of food in their food cupboard, in their larder, at home. They've got all the TV gadgets and everything else, but they've got 3 days worth of food. Because that immediate system of delivery is what we've been programmed to do. It's called just in time. But unfortunately, just in time isn't going to work anymore because China, that produces all the just in time, is just about to melt down and everybody's in quarantine. Nothing's moving anywhere. So you need to make preparation. You need dried food, rice. You need pasta. You need porridge. You need dried food. Anything that's canned. And you need to stock up. And my advice would be get sufficient for at least 3 months. As things start to get worse, you need to increase that. You then need to take a portion of the money that you've got left that you can put to one side. And my advice is this: when the fiat currency melts down, that plastic money that they've created for us, literally plastic money, you need to prepare. You need to buy some gold and silver bullion. Now you see all those adverts on TV, bullion by post, etc., etc., and other supplies are available. Well, that's what they're there for. And I would get myself a stock of bullion. If we can afford it, I'd buy bullion gold coins. And I would keep them safe, put them somewhere safe, and tell nobody. If you can't afford gold, then the next best option is silver bullion coins. And I'll tell you why. There's a differential between gold and silver. It's a multiple. And silver coins are available for between 17 and about £20 a coin in the UK. When this thing goes west, or as we say in the intelligence world and military intelligence world, wild weasel, when this goes wild weasel, and it will, analysts are saying that the gold price is going to go from, say, £1,500 an ounce to $50,000 an ounce. And silver may even go to $1,000 an ounce, and maybe more. What's the limit? It's interesting that countries like China and Russia have the biggest gold reserves. They're enormous. And they've been buying them for a long period of time, because they know that when it goes wild weasel and all of the finances, the plastic that they've created is gone, they're going to be the kings. They've got the money. They can call the tune. So my advice to you is, even if you can only afford £100, £200, £1,000, £5,000, whatever you've got, just buy a bit and put it to one side. Because it'll be worth a lot more than it is now. Because the banks have got a system in place. Last time the crash came in 2008, the government bailed them out. Since then, they've got wise. They signed a treaty from the Bank of England, between the Bank of England and the Federal Reserve, where they, and this is a treaty between them, which is hidden, and in that treaty, they agreed that your deposit money in the bank is not yours. So, the Bank of England and the Federal Reserve signed a treaty, and in that treaty they agreed that, and they stated, without your consent of course, because they do all these things without you knowing, that your money that's placed on deposit is no longer your asset. From the moment you deposit cash in a bank, it's no longer your asset, it's theirs. And they're going to bail out the banks and everybody else first, before you get anything. And if you think that little system they've got, the federal, the financial deposit scheme, £85,000, well, first of all, that's rated upon €100,000. So if the exchange rate for the euro goes up or down, it's no longer 85,000 anymore, it could be £70,000. You ask the people in Northern Rock how long it took them to get their money back. A long time. You don't be waiting around. You've got your bills to pay. So I'm telling you now, if you haven't got it in your hand, you don't own it. You need cash in hand, not in the bank. You need bullion to hand for when you can then trade it and barter it. You can either barter it at bad times, or you can hold on to it, and then when everything's sorted, and let's hope that it is sorted sometime, you've got something. You don't have to do anything that I've said in this program. You don't have to take my advice. You can just go along, la la la, and do your own thing. Or you can listen to what I have to say and act upon it. I'm here in the public interest to try to help you. To give you some advice, not with an American voice, but with a British voice. To my fellow Sangronans, I would highly recommend, I'm not getting a commission for this by the way, but I would highly recommend a very professional bullion dealer based in Blackpool, and they're called Chard. That's C-H-A-R-D, Charlie, Hotel, Alpha, Romeo, Delta. They're based on Hourside. They've been going for eons. They've been in the town for years. They're very successful because they're very good at what they do. In fact, I'm reliably informed that they are one of, if not the biggest bullion dealer in the UK. And I asked permission today to actually recommend them. And I have no hesitation whatsoever to recommend them. Do it online, do it by phone, call their office. However you choose to do it, don't sit back, do it straight away. Whatever you've got, go and get a bit. Don't buy it all, you need money for yourself. Remember, 3 months, a month, whatever it is you can afford to keep in the bank to pay the bills, and then just top it up as you go along. Keep the rest yourself, because when these banks go, they're going to take your money with them. Think about it. Keep your own counsel. Don't tell anybody what you're doing. Just do it. So I now come to UK media, and I want to put it on record that all citizens, all members of the public in Britain, should be watching the mainstream media like a hawk. And I want you to become witnesses. I want you to record those of you that are into the technology, those of you guys and girls out there who know what you're doing. I want you to record the statements made by mainstream media journalists. And I want you to preserve them for posterity and be efficient about it. Get a notebook, write it down. Write it when they said what they said and save the file. Because there is going to come a day when, if we survive this, that there will be an accounting made. Just like in Nazi Germany, when the propagandists were held to account. Remember William Joyce, Lord Haw-Haw? If you don't know who Lord Haw-Haw was, that's Haw-Haw, H-A-W-H-A-W. A man called William Joyce, and he acted for the Nazis, spreading propaganda, making radio broadcasts, and made fun of us. Made fun of all our brothers and sisters who were sacrificing themselves for something good. Whilst he loaded it up and made these reports. And I liken, and I've got to say this, I'm a fully accredited professional journalist, working in the public interest, in the public domain, acting against abuse of power, specialising in global security and intelligence. But as in all things, there are people in the profession who are just in it for themselves. And if you're sat there in these circumstances spouting propaganda to the public because you think, well, I'm not doing it because I don't want the public to panic, or I'm protecting my pension and my job, you're like the guys that are selling masks at a premium. You have a duty to the public. That's your primary duty to the public professionally. Then you've got a duty to your family and your relatives and your friends. You've got a duty not to sit there and spout propaganda. If I know all of these facts, they're in the public domain. Now it might be in the alternative media, and of course, remember that thing about conspiracy theory, fake news? Well, we all know that they've been presenting fake news for years. And it's a time, and I would call upon all journalists in all of the unions, the NUJ, the BAJ, BEC2, those who are honest and honourable to stand up. This is the time to do it. This is why you became a journalist. This is why you went into the profession, to help people, to bring the information to people. This is the time. The public are waiting for it. The public need your help. And I implore you to do so. And I implore the unions to do something, to stand up and to tell journalists who are members, speak the truth. Not what your principals are telling you to speak, or your editors telling you to speak, but speak the truth. Go and do the research. I'm an investigative journalist. I found the information. I found it really easily. Now I've got inside sources, okay, fair enough, but I don't know everything. And I have to go and research it and find the information. And I don't speak anything unless I've got a document for it. Go and find the documents. Go and find the truth. Go and see what citizen journalists are doing. Make Emma Parker from the Daily Star an example. That's what you need to do. So I'm telling the public, record what you see and hear. Same goes for every virologist and immunologist that appears on Sky News and the BBC and ITN and all the mainstream channels. I cite them because obviously those are the names of the channels in the UK. Channel 4 News and Channel 5. Yeah. So, when you see these people appearing, record what they say. Because they fall into different categories. They're either as dumb as anything, so full of themselves and their opinion and their academic ego that they really don't know anything, or they're trying to present themselves as if they know something when they're a virologist but they're not a bioweapon specialist, or they're actually taking a fee for what they're saying, or they're actually acting as a form of propaganda. There are only very few and far between that are speaking the truth, and we need to be able to identify who they are after the event. I'm not talking of a witch hunt here. What I'm talking about is gathering evidence in relation to what is being said and how it is affecting the public. Because what I'm telling you is trying to protect you. I don't want you to panic. I just want you to prepare. But what they're doing is potentially placing you in a position where you could be seriously injured by this virus because of what they are saying or what they are not saying. And it's important that you make sure that we can verify what they have said and when they said it. And I hope that in doing so, that does one of two things. It either makes them shut up, or it makes the people who really know come forward and speak to real journalists who publish the real truth, rather than the claptrap that we're hearing now, which any 7th grade child could reason out by thinking laterally. So, one, I want you to become citizen journalists and do that. 2, I want you to spread the logos that are attached to this presentation. Infecto, China, bioweapon, virus. By social media, by every method that you can think of, by email, by carrier pigeon, by whatever means you can, spread it, so that the public starts to ask the question, and the public starts to understand. And I have created this so that there is a visual identity of it. Instead of words, people can see it, they understand images, and they know what they can do with those images. Instead of taking selfies, send the images. Now, the algorithms built into YouTube, Twitter, Twatter as I call it, or into other mediums are going to stop it. And I want you to go and I want you to create accounts on an alternative to YouTube called Brighteon.com. That's Brighteon. It's been created by that genius guy that I told you, Mike Adams, and it's an alternative to YouTube, which is completely uncensored. It's a centre for videos of freedom and information. I want you to put it on drop space. And I want you to put it on BitChute. That's BITCHUTE. And I want you to spread it everywhere. And I want thousands of accounts with the Infecto logo on them. And I want you to create a narrative. And I want us to start to stand up, because this is the biggest threat to us in Britain since the Second World War. I make no bones about it. I don't apologise for it. I'm not sensationalising. I don't want to cause panic. But I want people to wake up and to understand the potential of this thing that has happened. So, that's the end of my presentation for tonight. I've tried my best to give the facts as I know them for now. On my Brighteon account, I will have created a new Brighteon account, which is Infecto China bioweapon virus. It's only just set up, but gradually I'm going to be introducing onto it all of the videos that relate to citizen journalists from around the world in relation to these matters. I want you to be observant. I want all you citizen journals out there to be observant. That, by the way, citizen journal is a phrase and identity that I have trademark upon. But what I want you to do is to open your eyes and ears. Be my eyes and ears. Be the eyes and ears of every brother and sister, every human being in this place, in Britain. I want you to record things you see. We've all got phones, we've all got cameras, we've all got recording. If you see anything, or you know something, and I don't just want tittle-tattle, if you have some real intelligence, I want you to send it to me at whistleblow@journalist.com. I'll repeat that again, whistleblow, all one word, at journalist.com. If you're a media outlet and you wish to communicate with me, if you're a journalist, if you're a virologist, immunologist, scientist, insider, intelligence agency, intelligence operative, military operative, any person in a position of authority, and you have some inside information which does not breach the Official Secrets Act, but you have some information that you think should come into the public domain in the public interest, then send it to me, and I and my fellow investigative journalists will assess it, investigate it, obtain the evidence we can from you, and we will report it. And you can do that by sending it, and this is only for those categories of people, you can send it to me directly at britishbulldog@journalist.com. I'll repeat that again, britishbulldog@journalist.com. So that's my message from Britain tonight. It's me, Dog, the British Bulldog, the British Watchdog. Signing off. Till the next time, God bless you all. Keep safe, keep well, love one another.
Okie dokie then. Well, what did you think of that, guys? Let me know in the description. So, as you can see, I'm fully prepared. I have no issues going outside now. As you can see, I am ready to face the world. I have my mask and I have my goggles. So, life is good. So it's just a shame that all you lot are going to die and I'll be the only one to live. Ha 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 ha. Right, okay guys, listen, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I've seen a lot of back and forth there in the chat. Ultimately, you know, this is, I guess you'll resolve this in the next couple of months. We'll see whether or not these predictions are true. If there's any grain of information there that you want to take away, by all means do your own research, and if you feel that you need to actually prepare yourself a little like this, hey, what's it going to cost you? A few quid? You never know, it may save your life. Now then, I'm going to be doing a stream immediately after this, so within the next 5 to 10 minutes we should have a stream up and running. I'm hopefully going to get a few guests in there, and let's get talking some flat earth. But in the meantime, former Illuminati master, Covert investigator journalist exposes coronavirus truth. That particular segment is now finished. And I'll see you all in the next one.